Hi, and welcome to Doing the Opposite, Business Disruptors, the podcast where you get to meet people who aren't afraid to swim against the tide, call out bad practice or injustice, people who own their mistakes and thrive off of challenges, and who ultimately choose only to see the summit and not the mountain. I'm Jeff Dewing. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an author of the best-selling book, Doing the Opposite, a keynote and masterclass speaker internationally, and CEO of Cloud. Today, you're going to meet David Allison, and he's all the way from Vancouver in Canada. David is a two-time author, an international speaker, and the founder of a Valuegraphics Project, which has fundamentally changed the way we understand ourselves. Following years of research on 1 million surveys in 152 languages, he has found a number of common threads, some of which are: age has nothing to do with how we behave. Gender roles are blurred, and our income does not affect or change what's in our hearts. Now, he goes a lot more into detail, and will do on this episode, and it's going to make you think differently. It's going to give you an insight that thinks, oh my God, we've been getting this wrong. So we're going to get under the skin of his incredible findings, his views, and why he believes that values are the single biggest force on this planet. So, hi, David. Thank you so much for joining me all the way from Vancouver. It's wonderful that geography plays no role in today's world.
Yeah, I love it here in Vancouver. You know, I'm very fortunate. I get to travel all over the world with my job as a speaker. And I always love coming home. And you know you're in the right place when you get that feeling, right?
You do. No place like home, as I say. So listen, David, again, it's great to be talking to you. I've been looking forward to this for some time now. And I think what I'm interested in first and foremost is if I can just ask you to spend just 2 minutes, just try and give us an insight into David, your journey, where it started, where you've ended, and anything relevant in between, and try and compress that into sort of a 2-minute headline, go for it type stuff.
Okay. Well, where I started and where I've ended up. I was a child of the 80s, I suppose, and there was a very popular television show that was all about people working inside an ad agency. It was called 30-something. And I just thought that seemed like the most glamorous job I could possibly imagine. And so I went to school and became a guy who worked in an ad agency. And then I progressed through a series of jobs and positions and worked my way up the ranks, and finally lit my hair on fire and ran away screaming and started my own, because that seemed like the logical way to not have any stress. And then from there, did a total 180. And now I'm a founder of a thing called the Valuegraphics Project. We profile target audiences and groups of people for my clients, and I speak about our research on core human values.
Brilliant stuff. Wow. So that was a real big whistle stop. So thank you for being one of the most efficient at doing that so far. So
it's hard. Your whole life like, come on, just give me a 2-minute summary.
Yeah. Surely my life must be worth more than this. Yeah. So I guess as we've spoken about before, one of the things that this show is all about is that element of doing something materially different, not twiddling the knob, sort of, really sort of throwing a grenade in the middle and doing the opposite to what anybody would normally think was natural, coming out your comfort zone and where that's happened, the benefit is brought. So I don't know if you can think of any examples in your journey where you perhaps applied that philosophy where you've gone the complete opposite against the grain, and what that was and what it was you did and what the outcomes were.
I can't think of many examples in my life and my career where I haven't done that. So we're going to be here a long time. Wow. I don't know. You said you've got a 30-minute. We're going to be at least twice that. I don't even know where to begin. I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story about how we ended up doing what we do right now and how we founded the Valuegraphics Project and why. So I started working in ad agencies, eventually had my own ad agency back when we called them ad agencies. Now they're called like strategic consulting creative firms and things like this. It was a good old fashioned ad agency. And what we specialized in was working with large scale real estate developers all around the world who were building condos and resort communities and office towers and sometimes entire little towns. And they would come to us and say, okay, we got to sell these things or rent them out or lease them or whatever it is they were trying to do. So like every other marketer in the world, we would begin each one of these projects by sitting down and saying, who are we doing this for? Who's the target audience here? And trying to define them. And we used the best tools we had at the time, which was primarily demographics. We'd say, well, they're 73% male and they earn this much money and they're married or they're single or they're have this many kids, whatever. And then we'd start making assumptions about who those folks are based on that information, sometimes a little bit of sales information and other things you could call psychographic information, but primarily it was demographic profiling. So fast forward, after spending $1 million talking to those people to get them to do what we wanted them to do, buy or lease or rent. The lovely thing about the real estate development industry is I would find myself in a room with those people 3 years later because we were done. We'd sold out the condo. So I'd be standing around looking and going, who the heck are all you people? What are you doing here? You don't resemble the group of people I've just spent a year or 2 years talking to and spending $1 million of my clients' money. And it just kept happening over and over and over and over again. And then I started talking to other people who are also in marketing going, does this happen to you in other sectors? A friend of mine is a chief designer for a very large global sportswear brand. He said, yeah, you know what? Now that I think about it, we have these personas. And we're supposed to design our stores and all of our clothing and everything for these personas. And when I go and stand in our stores anywhere in the world and look around, I'm like, who the heck are all you people? You know, this persona that we've spent all this money and time thinking about. So it's like, okay, there's something going on here. We're spending lots and lots of money talking to a group of people, and then some small number of them show up, but all these other folks show up too that we didn't even know were going to come. So I sold my company. So there's the first thing we did, I guess, I wasn't supposed to do, and said, okay, how do we disrupt this demographic idea of how we look at people? Now, demographics have been around since day one. We've always looked at other people and said, are they rich or poor, young or old, male or female, gay or straight, black or white? I mean, that's just how the world works. We profile a group this way. I started looking into it and figured out very quickly after just a skim across behavioral sciences like psychology and neurology and so forth, that the only way people make a decision to do anything is based on what their values are. So neurologically speaking, for example, there's an actual pathway in your brain that it fires up. It's inside a piece of your brain called the insula. So if you make a decision about two things, you're going to choose this one and it's aligned with your values, your insula rewards you. You get a dopamine hit. And if you choose this one, you don't, right? So we're all running around thousands of times a day trying to make decisions based on what is aligned with our values. So mystery solved. Looked around the room and said, these people who don't seem like they resemble each other, they're not part of the target audience description. They were identical to each other on the inside. We were just looking at what they look like demographically on the outside. It was about their values. So I said, okay, we got to figure this out. We're going to blow up demographics. We're going to stop people from using that as a way to understand who people are. And fast forward again through 1 million surveys we've done around the world now in 152 languages. We've built the world's first inventory of values and what makes us all tick and what makes us all do everything that we do all day long.
One of the things I've found when investigating values, and I've been lucky enough to be on lots of circuits, again, similar to you speaking and meeting lots and lots of people. And it took a long time for me to even understand or articulate what my values were. Because if somebody had asked me 25 years ago, what's your values? I'd have gone, don't know. I can name 300 things. But of course, that's not what it's about. How do you hone in on your values? So when you say that you found the people had the same values, how did you, through your surveys, extrapolate what those people's values actually were? And how did they even know what they were?
Well, here's the thing about values. You're dead right. Anybody you ask about their values, they'll either have a hard time telling you what they are, or they'll lie. They'll say,
Yeah. Well, they'll tell you they think it should be.
what they're trying to image of
Yeah.
themselves, they're trying to project, right? If you ask a room full of 100 people, is family an important thing to you? They're all going to say yes, even if they hate their family and killed their mother. So people will lie about this stuff nonstop. So you can't ask about values. You can't show people a list and say, here's a bunch of words that we think sound like values to us. Which ones sound like values to you? It's just business poetry. If you do that, we're just pricking pretty words that we think are all nice and warm and fuzzy. So what you do is you ask a million people in their own language, what gets them up in the morning and what their hobbies are and how they spend their time and what worries them and what keeps them up at night. And do they drink? And do they drink too much? And what causes them to drink? And when you listen to a million people tell you stories about their life and about all the decisions that they make all day long around all kinds of different factors, you start to hear patterns in the noise. So after all those million long form surveys we did, we took a look at the data, you kind of dump it all out in the dining room table and you sort it into piles, just like Halloween candy. You're like putting it. So it's like there's a whole bunch of full size chocolate bars. That's one pile. And a whole bunch of people are talking about bubble gum. That's another pile. It turns out there's 56 piles. There's 56 things that drive everyone all around the world to do everything that they do all day long. Now, here's the kicker. There's 56 values in what we now call the Valuegraphics database, but each one of them shows up in people's lives in a whole bunch of different ways. So belonging, for example, very, very important value in many parts of the world, not all parts, but in many parts of the world. But there's 912 definitions for belonging. So we have more than 8,000 codes in the database for those 56 values, so that when we see a group of people that are over-indexing on belonging, we can say, and this is exactly what we mean when we say belonging in this case. So we know what we need to do, what has to be in place for those people to feel like belonging is present and is a value that they can act on.
I mean, it's fascinating because I love all this stuff, because life is about asking the right question. It's only ever about asking the right question. And I think when you look at business, and ours included, we've got some values that we stick to, 4 values that just resonate through the business. But you don't just state a value. You have to state what your interpretation of that value is, so that it helps people articulate themselves to say, well, yeah, I like that, but I like the word integrity, but I don't really like that piece about it or that interpretation of it, or I do like that interpretation of it. So what you're doing is you're helping to give people clarity, right? So when you turn around to one of the things you've said in that journey, the reason I buy into that 100% is only because we've just had a workshop with AI. We brought some people over from America, and they taught 15 different departments in our business how they can use AI in their everyday jobs, right? The new buzzword of AI. They sat with the workshops over 2 days with these 15 different triad departments, and they played back to me at the end of it, and they said almost 80% of all of the questions that people asked in their own format commanded the same answer. But we didn't know that, because when we see it in isolation, we think these are like 15 different challenges. But in reality, 80% of those 15 different challenges could have been solved or were solved with one process. Yet we wouldn't have known that unless you'd have gone across that demographic, which shows you the power of survey, right? It shows you the power of asking all the different people different questions and looking for that common thread. And I think that's where the power is when you approach it in that way.
Well, and to date, as far as we're aware, no one has ever approached values this way. Values have always been very much a sort of a sortation exercise. Here's a list of words. Which ones make sense to you? Which ones seem to resonate? And it's so inefficient. Let me back up for a second. Values drive all of us all day long to do everything we do. They're the most powerful thing on earth, and yet the way we tend to talk about them and measure them is this incredibly, airy, poetic kind of thing. Like my values are this and that, or even corporations, they sit around and they say, okay, we're going to find some words here that we all kind of like, and we're going to put them up on the wall behind the receptionist and say, those are our values. It seems like a massive disconnect for me not to be using data and empirical evidence around the most powerful force on earth, and leaving it to the subjective conversations about our feelings. It's a huge missed opportunity, because here's what happens. If you understand the values of a group of people, So I'll give you an example. I'm on stage speaking to a particular audience who are people in the pet food manufacturing industry. And we are able to stand up and say, listen, we've profiled people who are pet parents, the pet food decision maker within a family that has pets. And here's some of their core values. Here's the ones they over index on compared to the rest of the population. And one of them is personal responsibility. They want to be the folks who get things done. They want to be the deciders who move the needle. And every decision they make all day long is around what's going to give me more of that ability to be the personally responsible one. So for a pet food manufacturer, you say, listen, it's quite simple. You need to give them a whole bunch of different options. This is if your dog's tired. This is if your dog's old. This is if your dog's young. This is if your dog's too excited. This is if your dog, so they can be the decider and figure out which thing that can be personally responsible for helping their pet and being the one who's in charge of that whole process. And they're going to love that as compared to one size fits all. This is the recipe that works for every dog in the known universe. It's like, not interested in that. I want to be responsible here. I want to be the one who makes decisions.
Yeah.
So at a very, very basic level, when you know what people are gravitating towards because their insula is giving them dopamine, you just give them that. You just connect the dots and say, well, here's what you need. So it works like employee engagement and retention. Everyone's running around right now saying, what do our employees want? We put in the ping pong tables and the free cereal in the lunchroom, and they're still leaving. And then we gave them all a raise and they're still leaving. He says, well, are their values aligned with what you're asking them to do? Are you creating a culture that makes them feel like this is a place that understands them and is making them feel great every day? And if you're not, you're missing an enormous opportunity. And now we can do it with data. So your original question was, what's different? Well, what's different is we've proven without a shadow of a doubt that demographics are nonsense. There's a system we've been using since the beginning of time. We've never got proof. Let me give you a stat. This will really drive the point home. So there's a million surveys in a database, accurate in 180 countries, more accurate than you need for a PhD. For Data Geek listing today, it's plus or minus 3.5% accurate, 95% confidence. So it's bulletproof stuff, right? So we can slice and dice it by demographics and say, okay, let's look at Gen Z. Everybody's running around right now going, what does Gen Z want? And so let's see how targetable, how similar are they? Can we talk about them as a group like that? Well, across all of the demographic labels that we're all familiar with, age, gender, income, marital status, Gen Z, all of them, everybody inside those buckets, they're only about 10.5% similar. They're 90% unalike.
Wow.
That Gen Z wants this. It's nonsense. It's absolute. If this was a show where we weren't going to get bleeped, I'd say it's fucking bullshit. It's absolutely ridiculous.
I know.
It's beyond me how we continue to spend trillions of dollars a year targeting people based on what we think we know about them because of their gender, their age, their income. But we do. You know what? If you find out your target audience is 73% female, what are you going to do with that? You're going to make everything pink? but we laugh about it. But I dare you to go into the toy store and look at the pink toys and the blue toys. Yeah. Like it's happening everywhere, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So we need to break the stranglehold that demographic thinking has on us. And start embracing what really does make people similar, which is their values, which cut across all demographics. So you put a group of people together who have the same values, they'll be all different ages and incomes and everything.
Yeah, and you cut through ageism and all the other stuff that we're trying to make a thing of. But listen, I want to dig a bit deeper into this because it's a subject that I find fascinating, and it's one I've been playing with and trying to utilize and learn from for 10 years. Now, one of the things that has really excited me about this conversation is that everything about our business is about values. And we started that journey when we started our business 10 years ago, establishing the fact that we need some values. What are those values? And of course, you go through that process. Well, what are some good words? What are the good words that look fancy? What are the good words that are going to look attractive? What are the good words that are going to make us stand out? And of course, there's only so many words, and none of the words make a single blind bit of difference. All that happens and all that is measured is how you behave. Right. So whatever you do, your value is dictated by how you behave, because that's how you behave. Right. So the key for us was when you have a business that says, right, these are our values, and you don't align them, or you don't take the time to establish the values of the people working for you, or you don't make it clear to the people you are bringing into your business, these are our values, do they align with yours? If you don't ask that fundamental question, then you're just playing the lottery, especially when it's recruitment, retention, or the other bits and pieces. So it also comes down to the fact that people do not have a set of values when they're at home and a different set of values when they're at
they're the
work.
same people.
It's one set of values.
Exactly.
Exactly. And it's about one of the things that I find really intriguing and spectacular about what you're doing and what you've done is you've asked the right question, whereas everybody's been asking the wrong question. But then it goes one stage further in complexity. What you've done is spectacular, and you've now, the rabbit is out the hat, right? The cat's out the bag now on the power of this stuff. The question now is, how do we get people to really hone in understanding their own values that they can articulate? They behave in a certain way, which is geared by values, but how do they articulate their values?
First off, I want to just comment on that for a moment. I think one of the best things that corporations can do is stop calling what they think are the corporation's values. Corporations can't have values. Corporations can have behaviors that we would like you to follow. We want you to have integrity. We want you to be fair. We want you to be good stewards of the company's finances and resources. Those are all great behaviors. You can say instead that the values of the people who are here are these. So it very much needs to be shifted, that conversation, away from pretending that this inanimate legal entity called a corporation can somehow have values. It can't. It can have a set of behaviors that we all adhere to. Now, the folks who work for you is one group of people. What we need to understand what their core values are, but also the folks who don't work for you yet, who are out in the talent pool, who you'll be recruiting from, because otherwise you're just creating a culture that's based. This is like a fly locked in amber. You're just talking to the folks who are there right now. So you got to take into account the ones who might be there tomorrow. You should also think about your consumers, your clients, your prospective clients or consumers, your partners, your vendors, everybody who's in your ecosystem. And if you can find out all of their values and see where they overlap, you'll end up with 2 or 3 values that work for shareholders and customers and employees and everyone, a set of values that they have in common. And now you can say, these are the values of the people who are involved with this legal entity called our corporation. And the behaviors that we would like to see everybody follow as a result of that are this, and this. So our behaviors come from our values. So that makes a lot more sense to me. Now, that's me barking up a tree that I probably will never get to the top of, because that's trying to change what the entire corporate universe thinks of as values and telling them that they don't have any. But there you go. So your question, how do individuals within any context understand their own values? Well, first we need to define what a value is. So a value, as defined primarily by the sociological world, but most behavioral scientists will agree with this definition. It's something that is so inherently part of who you are that you use it as a filtering mechanism to make every decision you make. Not sometimes and not every now and then, but every decision. So let me give you an example. A lot of us are doing things that we believe are great for, or hopefully helpful for, the planet. So we could say environmentalism is a value. And for some people, environmentalism is absolutely a value. But there's a whole lot of people who do environmentally friendly things, but it's not a driving force in every decision they make. I mean, Tesla. People buy Teslas. Is it because every one of them is concerned for the planet? No. Some of them are doing it because all their friends have one. So that's friendship. Some of them are doing it because they think it makes them look like they have a bunch of money. So that's social standing. Some of them are doing it for the planet. So that's environmentalism. So we need to make sure that what we're talking about is the stuff that drives us to make all of our decisions. Now, how do you find those things? Well, there's a bunch of different ways. This is going to sound like a book plug, but you've written a book. You know that you make about a book for everybody who buys. So my book is called The Death of Demographics, and there's a quiz in there. There's a 15 question quiz you can fill out. And that'll help you understand which of 15 chapters you kind of fit into. Now, those are the archetypes, the 15 archetypes. But that's courageous to say that the whole world fits into 15 categories. Of course, there's millions of categories that people in the world break out into. But if 15 big giant tribes, if you will, it's a start. At least you're putting yourself in with a group of people. And in each of those chapters, we tell you everything we know about the people who are inside that tribe. But an even simpler way, and by the way, you can use that quiz for your workforce or your clients, your employees, your customers, whoever. Just send that quiz out, tally it up, and it'll tell you what kind of people you got in your hands here. An even simpler way is these 3 questions that we've tested now around the world. We call them the 3 telltale questions. And I generally am giving these questions to people who are trying to understand the values of a group of people. Like, how do I understand the values of my clients or my employees? So you can use these 3 questions. But if you also sit down quietly by yourself, nobody's watching, and answer these honestly, like raw, honestly, you'll start to get a sense of what your values are. So the first question, why do you go to work? People will tell you it's because it's my creative outlet. It's because it's where my friends are. It's because I feel like I'm powerful there, because I'm doing a good thing for the world. They'll have all kinds of different reasons.
Or I need to pay the mortgage.
Yeah, pay off my mortgage. It's for my family. It's for, so that's one way to get to one question. The second question is, you've just won the lottery, and why would you give away half? Not who would you give it to or where, but why would you do that? And then the third question, which is my favorite, it's also a great friend tester. Next time your friends are over, a couple of drinks, use this one. You learn some stuff about your friends. So this one is, you get to say one thing to yourself from 10 years ago. And what would that one thing be? And the important part of the question, though, is why that thing? Why would you say that? Of all the things you could say, the one thing you chose to say to yourself 10 years ago. So if you ask people those questions, or ask yourself those questions, and are honest with your answers and not doing it in a way where you're just trying to show off for someone else, you start to get a sense of what's really driving you to make all the important decisions in your life. It's a fast and simple way. Again, it's not super accurate. Now, I will tease you with this. In the next few months, as we're speaking today, it's February 2024. The next couple of months, we're launching a new product. It's a partnership with another company, and it's going to be a personal values assessment that will be a competitor for Clifton Strengths and for DISC assessments. It'll be the first data-driven values assessment tool on the market. You fill out these questions and you'll get a report that comes back and says, here's your values based on the 1 million people in our database. Here's where they show up in your life. Here's your blind spots. Here's some things you might want to work on. And so we're trying to give people a more accurate way to understand this. We're not quite ready for it to go out into the market yet.
Hence why I was driving that statement. How do people find out and establish or able to articulate their values? And of course, when you look at things like DISC or ColourWorks or Six Geniuses and all the various other things that are out there, it's another sense of knowledge and information that just help you articulate, right? So I'm so pleased you said you got that, because I think that is going to be something that changes the way we look at ourselves, because it enables honesty, vulnerability. It enables you to really, truly look under the hood about who you are. And I think
there's a saying in the Southern United States, the ladies in the Southern United States say, from your lips to God's ears. So hopefully hopefully that's the case.
Yeah, and that's brilliant. And listen, I think, as I said, I'm fascinated by the power of values, and that's why I was so keen to talk to you. And I think you've given us a real good sort of overview and the importance, and the fact that you said something that I don't think for 1 second you've exaggerated. It is the single most powerful thing in life is values. It drives everything.
It absolutely is. It's a remarkable force, and it's like this invisible hand on the dial that we don't even see, that's driving everyone. Like, you watch the news, just turn on the news and see every single story. It's about some group of people standing up and saying, no, this doesn't align with my values. or it's about a company that's crashing and burning because they did something that doesn't align with people's values, or it's about a company that's like taken off and becoming an overnight sensation because they've tapped into some values. Everything in the world of commerce, interpersonal relationships, governments, war, everything is about values. Everything.
Listen, I'm really excited about the tool. I'm absolutely fascinated by the book. I ordered mine last week, so hopefully, because I'm in Portugal, nothing gets here easy. In the UK, I'd have had it by now, but in Portugal, unfortunately, there's a slight delay in efficiency. But so I'm looking forward to getting that. It's going to be fantastic. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to wrap it up now. I've had a good old chat on that, and there's a lot of information to consume. And I think one of the things I want to perhaps ask you now is, because of your specialist, your subject matter, if there was one message that you could give out to the audience, just one thing that would create some form of, I don't know, real deep thought about, wow, how would you create that really uplifting? And there's no pressure on this, clearly, by my build-up. How would you create that one uplifting message? What would that one message be to the audience?
We are all 100% irrevocably, irresistibly, undeniably values driven. So values are the answer, and it's time we put them to work.
Yeah, I absolutely think you're bang on. Absolutely bang on. And I can't wait for your assessment to come out, because I think it's going to attract an awful lot of attention because it's interesting. One final question. Your million surveys that you've done, which is obviously now we just have this incredible data set, is that continuing to maintain that data set, to improve it, to grow it? Or have you said, no, we're
yeah, you know what? We're drip feeding into it all the time. But here's the thing about values. It's a good point to end on. Our values don't change. The famous line, diamonds are forever. Values are forever. And we get them when we're young, in our late childhood, early adolescence, and they're with you for the rest of your life. So the values that we've collected for the population of the world in this statistically accurate sample, it's not going to outdate. We still drip feed new data in there every time we do a study for one of our clients, and every time we do a study for one of the keynotes that I'm going to give. But it's almost a redundancy. There isn't any need to, in terms of maintaining its accuracy.
Because the data set is so great that you only get minute variances because the main data set is there and it's
and your values aren't going to ever change. Like, you were born with them and you die with them. So as new people come into the data set, that's great, but it's the measurement is statistically accurate for the population of the world, regardless of, whether you turn. That's the thing about demographics too, right? I mean, you're 18 to 24 years old, and one day you wake up and you're 25, or you're a whole different person, right? Because you've had one sleep and you're now in a different demographic category. Your values aren't going to do that. Your values just stay with you forever.
So, David, listen, it's been absolutely fantastic. Love it to death. Can't wait to get the book. And also, I can't wait for your assessment to come out, because I'll be one of the first people to give it a go, because I'm curious as what I think my values are versus what an assessment would tell me now. So that's
I have an invitation for you. When the assessment comes out and you do it, let's get back on here, and I will help you walk through your results, and we'll figure out what your values really are and what's driving you, my friend.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So listen, David, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it, and I know the value to the audience is going to be spectacular, and again, a true reflection of doing the opposite. So thank you very, very much for that. It's brilliant.
Thanks for having me on.
God, I love that conversation. We really got under the skin of some stuff there, but there was so much more we could have talked about. I just love the realization, the understanding, and the challenge that we've been getting it wrong for decades and decades. And we've been working and researching demographics that told us nothing. We just thought we did. It's a complete reset to our thought process. The other thing that really drove me, which you'd have heard in my questions, was how do people, individuals, get to understand or articulate their values, or what's important to them, and what drives every one of their decisions? Because we all talk about values, we never really hone in on what they mean to us. So I found that fascinating. I can't wait to read his book, and I also can't wait till he releases his assessment tool, because that will really be eye-opening for a lot of people. Please also, when you get the time, visit the podcast website. Go to jeffdewing.co.uk and simply select podcast. And there you'll be able to see the richness of all of the episodes that we've recorded over 5 seasons with some incredible guests, incredible subjects, where we really, really get under the skin of stuff. And of course, you can now watch these podcasts as well as just listen to them. And the details of my YouTube channel are in the show notes. A big thanks to my team, Gabby and Nicola at Cloud, my PR team, Thinking Hat, and of course my production team, Sam Walker and Michael Blades at What Goes On Media. Thanks for listening.